Hey there, welcome to Unit 3, Lesson 2. So remember, Unit 3 is all about making sure we're understanding the foundations in the early days of our government under the new US Constitution. So last week, when we ended the week, when we started Unit 3, we talked about the rights that are given to us in the Bill of Rights and how federalism set up a system in which the states were going to have some power and the federal government was going to have some power. And then sometimes they were going to share things. So we're just doing a little bit of foundational work here. So today, your focus is going to be continuing that and learning about understanding our new rights, specifically looking at the arguments of why we were adding those Bill of Rights that we talked about last week into the Constitution. So to go through the agenda for today, you're going to be completing 2 interactive notebook pages as you go through this with me. Then you are going to be submitting a discussion post. If you have any time remaining, work on your test corrections for Unit 2's test, because a lot of people need to improve their Unit 2 test grade. And then just keep working on any other missing work that you might have. So the interactive notebook pages that you need today look like this. So we're covering the idea of like, do we actually need, do we actually need a Bill of Rights? So I'm going to go through with you and we're going to look at 10 different quotes. And then I'm going to tell you what that quote is actually saying in regular terms, because sometimes it's hard to go through. Let me turn the sound off of my phone so that we don't get any distractions. And then we'll decide, is this an actual quote that is supporting adding a Bill of Rights to the Constitution or not? So let's go ahead and get into it and get started. So our first quote that we're looking at says, "Of what avail will the constitutions of the respective states be to preserve the rights of its citizens? The Constitution of the United States and the laws made in pursuance thereof is the supreme law, and all legislatures and judicial officers, whether of the general or state governments, are bound by oath to support it." Now, that is a really long, fancy way to just say this. This is what the quote is actually saying. Will the constitutions of each state be able to preserve the rights of the citizens? So, is it enough for the states to be the ones that are preserving the rights, or do we need the national government to do that? The Constitution is the supreme law of the land, and the states are going to have to follow it. So this person in this instance is making the argument that we do need to add a Bill of Rights to the Constitution. So they're saying, like, listen, we're not sure that it's enough for the states to preserve our rights. We want it in writing on a larger scale, because the Constitution is ultimately what has the most power. Let's look at the next one. The most blind admirer of this Constitution must in his heart confess that it is far inferior to the British Constitution. In the British Constitution, the rights of men are fixed on an unmovable foundation and clearly defined, ascertained by their Magna Carta, their Petition of Rights, and their Bill of Rights. So again, to take this quote and make it a little bit easier to understand, what we're looking at here is they're saying, like, listen, even if you like the Constitution for the United States, you have to admit that it isn't as good as the British Constitution, because at least the British Constitution is going to be guaranteeing rights to the people. We're not doing that in the US Constitution. So again, and remember, these are people who are not supportive of the British government, but they're like, listen, we're creating a constitution that isn't even as good as the one that we had given up, because at least then our rights were written down. So this is most certainly going to continue to support adding a Bill of Rights to the Constitution. Let's look at the next one. Bills of Rights have no application to constitutions professedly founded upon the power of the people and executed by their immediate representatives and servants. Here, in strictness, the people surrender nothing, and as they retain everything, they have no need of particular reservations. Again, very wordy. Here's what that's actually saying. The people don't need to worry about the new Constitution not having a Bill of Rights, because all their rights are already being provided by the states. So nothing to worry about. Your rights are being protected already. This is a quote that is not supporting the addition of the Bill of Rights. Now, keep in mind, they're not saying that you don't deserve, when they're like, we don't need the Bill of Rights, they're not saying you don't deserve freedom of religion or freedom of speech or your right to bear arms. They're just saying each individual state is providing that for you. The national government doesn't have to provide it for you. So they're saying we don't need to have a national Bill of Rights. Let's look at number 4. The establishment of the writ of habeas corpus, which is a rule in the Constitution that says that you have to be told what you're being charged with if you're charged with a crime. The prohibition of ex post facto laws, which are going to be the idea that if something was legal when you did it and then it becomes illegal, they can't go back and then get you in trouble for it and say, well, it's illegal to do now, and we know you did it 10 years ago. Like, you're not allowed to do that. And titles of nobility. So in other words, we're not giving anybody the titles of lords and ladies and knights and, you know, all of that kind of stuff. We're not doing titles of nobility in our country like they were doing over in England. So to start this over, the establishment of the writ of habeas corpus, the prohibition of ex post facto laws, and of titles of nobility, to which we have no corresponding provision in our Constitution, are perhaps greater securities to liberty and republicanism than any it contains. So basically what it's saying here is that the Constitution is already protecting us. We're being protected with the writ of habeas corpus. We're being protected against ex post facto laws, and we're not having any titles of nobility. And that should be enough. You shouldn't need more. So this is going to be a quote that says, no, we don't really need to add a Bill of Rights to the Constitution. Here's quote number 5. The powers delegated, which is a fancy way of saying given, the powers delegated by the proposed Constitution to the federal government are few and defined. Those which are to remain in the state governments are numerous and indefinite. The powers reserved to the several states will extend to all the objects which concern the lives, liberties, and properties of the people. So this is an argument that is stating that the federal government is only going to have a few powers. The rest of those powers go to the states, and the states will have a lot of power, and the states therefore will be able to protect the liberties and the rights of the people. Therefore, this is going to be another quote that is saying, no, we don't need to add a Bill of Rights to the Constitution, because the states are going to be the ones that are going to be making that protection. You can see this is a recurring theme. Don't worry about it. The states are going to do it. The states are going to do it. Let's look at the next one. Nothing need be said to illustrate the importance of the prohibition of titles of nobility. This may truly be denominated the cornerstone of Republican government. For so long as they are excluded, there can never be serious danger that the government will be any other than that of the people. So again, this one's talking about those titles of nobility, the no lords, no knights, no ladies, no sirs, you know, all that kind of stuff. So they're saying, like, we're not allowing for those titles of nobilities. And that should be enough to protect your rights. That should make you feel good that, you know, the things that we had to deal with that were taking your rights away over in England, we're not going to have to deal with that now. So again, this is another argument against adding the Bill of Rights. Here's the next one. We conceive that there is no power which Congress may think necessary to exercise for the general welfare, which they may not assume under this Constitution. Those very powers which are to be expressly vested in the new Congress are of a nature most liable to abuse. So again, let's look at what it's actually saying. Congress will be able to make any laws to protect the general welfare. This much power makes it easy for them to be able to abuse that power. Again, if we're concerned that there's going to be an abuse of power, that is all the more reason to have a Bill of Rights. So yes, this is an argument for supporting the addition of the Bill of Rights. Let's look at the next one. The Constitutional Convention was composed of ambitious men whose similitude to each other consisted only in their determination to lord it over their fellow citizens. They were unanimous in forming a government that should raise the fortunes and respectability of the well-born few and oppress the plebeians, which is just a fancy way of saying the common people. So here's what this quote is actually saying. The convention only included elite men, like the cream of the crop were the ones that were there. And the Constitution was ultimately created to help them out, not to help out the common man. As a result of that, they felt that the common man wasn't going to be protected. So this is going to be another argument for adding a Bill of Rights to the Constitution. Next one. This principle is a fundamental one. In all the constitutions of our own states, there is not one of them but what is either founded on a declaration or Bill of Rights, or has certain express reservation of rights interwoven into the body of them. Again, this quote is saying the states are already protecting you. Every state already has your rights listed out in their individual state constitutions. So therefore, they're making the argument again of we don't need it in the actual US Constitution. So this is another argument against. Next one. Bills of rights are, in their origin, stipulations between kings and their subjects, reservations of rights not surrendered to the prince. They are not only unnecessary in the proposed constitution, but would even be dangerous. They would contain various exceptions to powers not granted. Here's what this quote is saying. The Bill of Rights, when people have them, are meant to be between the people and the king, but we don't have a king. So therefore, they're completely unnecessary. In fact, having them can cause more problems than good, can cause conflict. Think about it today. We have freedom of speech. How often do people have arguments and court cases and stuff dealing with freedom of speech or any of your other freedoms that are there? So they're saying like, this can actually end up causing more problems than good by having it. This is another example of them saying, no, we don't need to have it. We don't have kings. Bills of rights are intended between kings and the people. But obviously, that's not something that we continue to follow because we're going to add the Bill of Rights to the Constitution and we still don't have a king. So that brings us through the 10 different quotes. I just wanted you to see some of the arguments, be able to see the way that they wrote it, be able to see what they were actually saying, why they were saying, yes, we should have the Bill of Rights, or no, we should not have to add the Bill of Rights to the Constitution. I now want to know your thoughts. So you're going to be doing a discussion post. Once you're done filling out your interactive notebook pages, you're going to want to make sure that you keep them open because you're going to need them for the discussion post. In the discussion post, you're going to answer the following questions. Number one, which argument for needing the Bill of Rights do you think is the best? So you're going to go back through, look at the ones that said yes, and tell me which one you think was the best argument for saying, yeah, we need to have a Bill of Rights in the Constitution. Number two, which argument for not needing the Bill of Rights do you think is the best? And again, explain your reasoning. So again, go back through, look at the no's and say, this is the one that I think is the strongest reason for us saying we don't necessarily have to have a Bill of Rights. Number three, which side would you have been on? Do you think you would have been on the side supporting the addition of the Bill of Rights or against it? And then number four, looking back at the Bill of Rights and those 10 amendments that are listed there. So you're going to want to go back up to the previous interactive notebook pages from what we did in our Unit 3 Lesson 1 lesson. Go look at those amendments and then tell me which of those 10 amendments you think is the most important and why. Being sure, again, to explain your reasoning. So you're going to go through and do that in your discussion post. I'm going to come back out here. You will see the discussion post labeled right here. So you're going to click on that task. I've got the questions that you're going to be answering again. It tells you to use your interactive notebook pages to help you. And you're just going to go and type it into this reply area and literally type in one, like once you click it, one, period, and then type your answer in, and then two, and type your answer in. And then that'll be it. So if you have any time remaining after that, then make sure that you are working on test corrections or any missing work that you might have. Y'all need to remember the end of the quarter is coming up very, very quickly. So with that being said, let me know if you need anything. You know how to get in touch. Have a good one, guys.